together. Together right now.
All right. Well, thank you all for coming here today. The topic of the discussion is a bill package that Representative DeBoyer and myself are introducing to abolish the MEDC. We have a proven record from the MEDC of failure. With 9% of their jobs promised coming to fruition from 2000 to 2020, they clearly have shown their path record and the trajectory they're on for the state of Michigan. And then we see failures with the SOAR project since then, from Goshen failing to the fledgling project with Blue Oval to SanDisk backing out of their plans from the Mundy megasite. The writing on the wall is clear that what the state of Michigan is doing to invest in corporate giveaways is not working for the state of Michigan. We need to reassess this approach that we have as a state. And I do want to start just by thanking both Speaker Hall and Representative Chair DeBoyer, Chair of Oversight, for the work that they've done in terms of bringing these conversations to fruition and affording me the opportunity to have this platform to do what I'm doing as chair of the Oversight on corporate subsidies and state investments. Because what we typically see is the minority party is usually what is leading the charge in terms of challenging this type of process and these types of handouts. And what we have for a first time is we have a Republican majority in the House that's taking seriously, looking into and investigating and challenging the ways of the past here in the state of Michigan. Now, some of us believe just completely abolishing the MEDC and replacing it with nothing is the best route for the state of Michigan. There are others who believe that there's better ways to have the state involved in certain processes for trying to attract business and retain business in the state of Michigan. So I do understand that we're not always in complete alignment throughout the political spectrum. But what is abundantly clear is that MEDC has failed the taxpayers of Michigan. It has failed our state. It has failed our small businesses. And it is at the expense of the people, the hardworking middle class. And we need to reassess our approach to this. And the way that we do that is to go right at the belly of the beast, abolish the MEDC, and look into different routes. I believe in less rules, regulations, taxes, fines, and fees in a business-friendly environment where everybody can thrive. We need to quit picking winners and losers and turn it back to the marketplace. The free market is the best regulator. That's the reality. And with that, I will turn it over to Representative DeBoyer for a few comments before we open it up for questions.
Thank you, Steve. Yeah, I think the experiment is over, frankly. As Steve pointed out, I would say that even within our own caucus, there are some obviously nuanced differences with regard to economic development, with regard to what is the role of state government. But I can tell you that I would say collectively our caucus has come to a determination that the experiment of MEDC and SOAR has failed. We've committed $2.5 billion to different companies and, with promises of 65,000 jobs. And, the truth is that those have not come to fruition. You have to remember that these are taxpayers' dollars. These are hardworking taxpayers. These are single mothers. These are married couples. And we're taking their tax dollars and we're writing bribery checks to corporations to convince them to come to Michigan and to develop their business here. When there's a very simple concept, which I don't believe anyone can disagree with, which is this: make the environment of the state of Michigan a business-friendly, more common-sense regulatory location for people to come here and establish their businesses, in addition to retain people here. If you look at the numbers of graduates from our universities that we subsidize, by the way, that leave here, some of the highest paying jobs that come out of there, that leave the state of Michigan and go to other states, frankly, because of the regulatory environment. We rank at or near the bottom in a number of those economic categories. We are not competitive. And to believe that we can take taxpayers' dollars, bribe companies to come here, that is a long-term solution, is a fallacy. Because if they will come here for a check, they will leave here for a check. We want entities in the state of Michigan that are committed to our state, that are committed to our people, that are comfortable here, that are not overregulated, that are not overtaxed. That is why I think the experiment with the MEDC picture program incentives is done. It is time to move forward. I'm certain there will be debate about what does the next step look like. If the next step does not involve a better regulatory and taxing structure on corporations and small businesses in the state of Michigan, according to myself, my position is it is a non-starter. That is the primary reason that we struggle to maintain and attract businesses into the state of Michigan. It has nothing to do with bribery checks. It is the regulatory state and the taxing structure. So with that, if you don't have any other further comments, Steve, we can open it to questions.
Yeah, and before we start with questions, we'll have a hard stop at 11:55. I just know a lot of colleagues here will have noon committees, so we'll go to 11:55 at maximum. Yes.
Do these bills that you're introducing, do they go along with the packages introduced by Senator Albert, or are they completely different?
Yeah, so I talked with Senator Albert briefly at the end of last week. He introduced 53, maybe it was 55. It was a lot of bills. And they are very focused on just two narrow things. One is abolishing the MEDC, and two is ensuring that the MSF does not negotiate contracts with local governing entities, and just doing those two things. Senator Albert does get into some other things off on the side, like with Renaissance zones and how that process is moving forward. So he definitely has a massive process over there. I did not know he was working on it until after he had introduced his package, so I was happy to touch base with him last week, and to also just continue to show we don't just have Republicans in the House who are focused on this. We have allies, whether it's on the far left with Representative Dylan Wagella, or over in the Senate with Senator Albert, and many in between. And so this is something that has broad support, and then we'll just have to assess as a legislature, if we do this, what's the route forward, and have those conversations.
So what's your plan for the strategic fund? Does that go on to?
This does not fully abolish the strategic fund. I think that is something that we certainly could look into tackling as a legislature, absolutely. But this just goes at the gut of the corporate giveaways, which is the MEDC and their failure. Yes.
How do you, like, if this were to pass, how do you unwind some of these moments, some of these grants and these comments along, for example,
Right. Yeah, this would be for focused on moving forward. The state has already made its promises in the past, and so those deals have already been settled and agreed upon. So this is for focusing on not doing it anymore moving forward. It has a process built in terms of how the MSF will just handle that moving forward, and then just not do it anymore. Yes.
Well, I guess I'm a little curious about kind of the specifics of abolishing the MEDC and those kind of weird quasi-government entities. So what does this look at? Does this look at pulling out state-funded authority from the group? Does this look at, kind of just removing its authority to act on certain areas? I guess I'm a little curious about what the actual abolishment process looks like.
Right. So the state has already made its contracts from the past that will need to make whole, but from moving forward, not giving them any more money and not giving them that authority to negotiate new deals with companies. Companies, the way it's supposed to work, I believe, is they bring a product to market, they make their own investments, you buy your own property, you invest, and you sell a product. You might find investors along the way. That's the free market process of doing things, but compelling taxpayers to fund projects and doing that moving forward is something that I think we need to shut down the taking from the people in order to fund the corporate giveaways process. And then Colin next.
Well, I was curious, in your ideal world, what would you like to see move along with this? Because if you eliminate our economic development driver, entities could say,
Michigan is closed for business, so you probably want to, carry this along with something else, a tax cut or something else. What do you want? What would you like to package?
I personally wouldn't like to see us picking winners and losers moving forward. So if we have less rules, regulations, taxes, fines, and fees across the board, that will be a business-friendly environment that will be attractive for everybody. Why we have to set the tax rate up high and burden our small businesses and then give the special deals to just the big corporations, why don't we just lower it across the board for everybody? That, to me, is a common-sense solution that will grow our business, attract people to come to the state of Michigan, not just for a few companies, but for all companies, big or large, politically connected or not politically connected. Get away from the political drama and intensities of it and just leave it to the marketplace to run its course. And lowering those regulations is a key element of that. And that's something that probably comes to a surprise for a lot of people, but a burdensome regulatory environment is something that a lot of big corporations actually want in their industries, because the more we regulate their industry, the more it crowds out their small business competition. So if we lower that regulatory environment, small businesses will be able to compete with the big businesses more, and big businesses will not have the burdensome red tape to deal with themselves. Lower taxes for them, lower taxes for everybody, unilateral across the board, and we can see our economy thrive. Yes.
Just really quick, something we haven't even talked about in the component as we thought through this idea, is there is a definite undertone of mistrust. You're all aware of the issues that MEDC has faced. You're all aware of the administration of some of the grants that they've been responsible for maintaining. And credit to Beth LeBlanc from the Detroit News and her reporting about the State Administrative Board yesterday, having a 4-minute long meeting in eliminating the continued contract of the Chief Compliance Officer. The Chief Compliance Officer is there as an independent individual to oversee these things that go on and to make recommendations when they think that something doesn't really quite pass the smell test. Now, this may be a necessary thing that occurred, but it was a 4-minute long meeting with no discussion, a straight up vote, no information provided in the packets. I'd like to know where the discussion was had, because it wasn't had in the meeting about the justification of eliminating that contract. There may be nothing there, but when you are in the midst of a scandal, when the Attorney General has raided the MEDC office, and then the State Administrative Board comes together, has a 4-minute meeting, no information, and eliminates the position of the Chief Compliance Officer, it really doesn't look very good. And the reality is that perception is reality. And so when people like myself see that go on, my default is, what in the world is going on? So, we're not even getting into the potential of conflict. We're not getting into the potential of fraud. We're not getting into the potential of misappropriation of funds. We're just saying the experiment, if it all was on the up and up, all of it has failed. Government's really bad at changing course. But I don't mind it, because some of the best sells you'll ever make in investments are for losses, because you get out before you lose more. And that is what's going on with MEDC. And that is what's going on with our economic development plan. Sorry, thanks.
Very good. Colin.
You started to answer Kyle's question, but government minimum taxes that the state can't unilaterally disarm that other states are also listening to the bottom of the wheel here. I want to know what your response to that is, the idea that the state can't get rid of all its economic.
In terms of not unilaterally disarming, I think that's close to what we're doing when we have high tax rates for our small businesses and the people of Michigan. That's very close to what we're doing with this burdensome regulatory environment that we have. And then we give these exemptions and these carve-outs and these special deals to the politically connected. That's effectively what Governor Gretchen Whitmer and that burdensome regulatory environment type of strategy has given Michigan. And then she wonders why people are leaving the state because the economy isn't doing all that well unless you get these special deals. It's very difficult to make ends meet in Michigan without having those corporate giveaways and those handouts. So I think she's right for the wrong reason on that, and it's her policies that are the type of problem for the state of Michigan. That's my belief.
It seems like you have a pretty clear plan for what you want to do to create this better business environment that you're talking about. So why not just wait until there is that legislation to change those tax credits and regulations and dismantle the MEDC at the same time so that there is
I do know that there are ongoing conversations about how we might handle economic development in the state of Michigan moving forward. That's not something that I personally support, because I believe that the free market is the best regulator and we should just leave it at that. Where there might be differing thoughts or perspectives, or what route the state of Michigan might take, is conversations that are certainly healthy and appropriate for us to have and to decide how we're going to move forward. For me, I'd say we have a 9% batting record with corporate giveaways through the MEDC, and to think that if we just do it a little bit less bad, we can get up to 100%. Well, 9% getting all the way up to 100% by doing it a little bit less bad is a very aggressive concept of believing that that's actually something that we could get to. If we get to 50%, I would be abundantly pleased by that point with that type of process, and that's just something that I don't think is best for the state of Michigan, so I would personally recommend not going in that type of route.
The governor, and I think Steve Collins said that part of the budget agreement was some sort of economic development policy. If you're advocating for that program or that deal, where would you want it?
I don't know what their plans are. I haven't heard yet in terms of whether that'd be through the MEDC or otherwise. That'll remain to be seen. For me personally, that's something that I won't support in that circumstance. I don't believe that government has a role in driving the economy. It has a role in protecting the rights of the individuals, which includes their market transactions that they make. I will go off on a brief analogy here for a second and just talk about something so basic as toothpicks. You can buy 500 toothpicks for $1.97. But what all goes into making those toothpicks? You have to tear down a tree with all kinds of big machines. You have to pay labor for men to go and do it. You have to log those trees to a place to have a machine that's going to take that wood and break it down into its small little pieces. You have to have a little contraption to sell those toothpicks in, and you have to have a label that you put on that contraption to sell it at the marketplace. And all of that is done for less than $2. Imagine if government was in charge of running that process. If we had government figure out how to bring toothpicks to market, would it cost $2? $200. It would probably cost $200. It wouldn't be anywhere near $2. So let's get government out of the way of driving the private sector, and let's get government back to its proper role, which is to protect our rights, whether they're the personal decisions we make in our life or the decisions we make in the marketplace with transactions that we make in a free market economy. That's my perspective. Yes. So that is, yeah, there are revenue streams that currently do drive money to the MEDC. So, looking into how that money then gets back to the state and or is used for more proper and appropriate processes is something that's definitely logical to look into. So I'll be happy to talk with you further about those types of things. But you are correct. There is money that when people go and do gaming type of activities, it does drive that money to the MEDC. And how the state would need to look into some of those nuances is something that is definitely worth conversation moving forward. Yes.
You put up the SOAR fund earlier. SOAR still has about $6.7 million in it. What do you want to see happen with that money?
I'd like to see it return to the people. Return to the people. Good question. And is there one last question? And we'll have to wrap it.
I'm just kind
Yes.
of curious because, we know you guys with your committee's been looking into the MEDC as well as in regards to the governor's overseas travel. I guess with the MEDC gone, would you like to see kind of an end to the government making overseas trips, or is that something that you'd like to see an alternative funding mechanism, or even just the governor's office using its own funds to,
Right.
those trips?
Right, yeah. So our committee on corporate subsidies and state investments has had 20 meetings in the past 8 months, and some of those recent meetings have been looking into Governor Gretchen Whitmer's overseas travels. And if she was having conversations about attracting people to Michigan exclusively off of saying, hey, we have a workforce that's ready here in Michigan. We have roads that you can rely on. We have infrastructure, energy that you can trust is going to be there. And we have a regulatory environment that's not burdensome. And our tax level is low. And that's why you should move to Michigan. If that was the nature of her conversations when she talks with businesses overseas who might want to move to Michigan, that would be a reasonable and healthy and appropriate conversation. But we all know clear well that what's going on is she's bribing companies from other countries to move to Michigan to get their special deals that all the small businesses and existing people in Michigan are not receiving. That's the problem with her overseas travels and her process. And people who want to take their money and give it to the politically connected and transfer that wealth from the hardworking middle class to the elitists, not only in our state but around the world, should love what Gretchen Whitmer is doing overseas. But if they want to keep more of that hard-earned money in their own pockets and decide with them by themselves what they're going to do with their money, then they should reject what she's doing, and they should vote for people who are going to look out for the little guy and not the big guy like she does. Thank you all for coming here today, and we will be introducing those bills. We do have press releases if you want a copy of a press release to take with you, and you can reach out to my office if you have any further questions. Thank you.